Has she already started it?
Imagine living in a world with no lions, tigers, or bears. Oh my.
Oh my.
This could be a reality if the lack of wildlife protection we have in our world continues. Wildlife protection is important to the environment in which we live in. The lack of it leads to the degradation of our ecosystems. Throughout my studies as a geography environmental studies major, I have established knowledge on the way our ecosystems work and how important wildlife is to keep these ecosystems going. Throughout this speech, I will touch on the need for wildlife protection, solutions to wildlife loss, and some arguments against wildlife protection. I hope this speech leaves you with a greater appreciation for wildlife and a want to protect the many species living on this earth. The problem is, the lack of wildlife protection is leading to the degradation of ecosystems. Wildlife protection is needed because it helps to keep ecosystems healthy. Biodiversity is a key component to a healthy ecosystem. When species start dying off, specifically wildlife, ecosystems start changing and not for the better. Many people do not see the need for biodiversity, but when there is a biodiversity crisis, that means human health and livelihood are at risk. One of the major problems with wildlife is the loss of it. It is said that humanity has wiped out 60% of mammals, fish, birds, and reptiles since 1970. Mike Baird of WWF says, "This is far more than just being about losing the wonders of nature. Desperately sad though that is, this is actually now jeopardizing the future of people. Nature is not a nice to have, it is our life support system." Barrett makes a great point. We do not realize how much we rely on wildlife for our survival. Wildlife provides us with clean water, food, and resources. Not protecting the wildlife is not only killing off species, but also causing harm to ourselves. If you look at the handout that I gave you at the beginning of speech, you will see that on the right there is a series of bar graphs that show the species population decline from 1970 to 2010. We have lost 39% of terrestrial species, 76% of freshwater species, and 39% of marine species. To the left, you can see the primary threats to wildlife populations, the two largest being exploitation, which has to do with wildlife trafficking, and habitat degradation or change. Solutions have been created to combat the wildlife protection problem. Wildlife management is one of the solutions to help keep both humans and wildlife happy. Regulating hunting and fishing can help keep a species from becoming overpopulated and also ensure that it is not becoming endangered. Another aspect of wildlife management is to help reduce conflict between people and animals. Some ways to do this are to make sure both people and animals have the space they need and to have buffer zones between designated animal and human habitats. Another way to help reduce conflict between people and animals are managing our resources. When we take away from their habitats or completely destroy them, they tend to migrate to our communities searching for what was taken from them. Wildlife trafficking is a huge issue that is causing many species, such as tigers, rhinos, and elephants, to become extinct. Many countries, such as France and Thailand, are banning the trade of ivory in hopes of deterring poachers from killing elephants and rhinos. Another way to protect wildlife is to reduce human impact. This means consuming less. Be mindful of where your food and other resources are coming from. Reducing pollution, which could be plastic, carbon dioxide, or other waste or harmful emissions, could all lead to helping protect wildlife because it is their home we are dirtying. Not everyone agrees that wildlife protection is actually needed across the world. There are some arguments against protecting wildlife. One argument against wildlife protection comes from biology professor Alexander Pyrne. He makes the point that death is inevitable for these species that we are trying to save. Pyrne also states that areas with the highest biodiversity, such as rainforests, cause the most harm to humans because of infectious diseases. Pyrne makes a good point about species dying off and eventually being replaced by new. This is what we saw when dinosaurs went extinct. Eventually new species were thriving in ecosystems they once called home. Although this is a sound argument, I disagree with him. Species are rapidly becoming endangered and going extinct. These species could be the cure to many incurable diseases, and we are letting them die off. Also, many areas with the highest biodiversity do have infectious diseases, but this is not to blame on the species that live there. Monica Hernandez Morcillo states that the 90% of the world's extremely poor populations are found in the tropical grassland and forest biomes of sub-Saharan Africa and Asia. These are also the areas that have the highest biodiversity. Many tropical areas suffer from poverty. They are underdeveloped countries that do not have access to safe resources, and this could be a reason for the spread of high infectious diseases. So as you can now see, there are many issues facing the wildlife on this earth, but there are many solutions to these issues. Although there will always be arguments against helping, it is important to recognize the need for these species. Throughout our lifetime, we could see the death of many beloved species, such as the polar bear, tiger, and now even the giraffe. We can help stop the decline of these species if we work together to change our lifestyles and recognize our actions as humans have consequences.